Okay, we're going to start working with lights in 3ds Max. And pretty much the objectives for these next couple lessons are simply going to be able to show you how to create, move, or I should say edit, different types of lights in 3ds Max, as well as adjust their settings to make them brighter, dimmer, change them colors, cast shadows, different types of shadows. So we're going to begin by simply just creating a, we'll go out to standard and do a plane in the top view. And I'm just going to create this. I'm going to go ahead and change it white so that we'll be able to see the color effects. We're going to go ahead and do a sphere out in the middle of our area here. And colors really are not going to be an issue at this point. We'll move around here so that we have a decent perspective view here. We can see the table or the floor. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is when we go to do a quick render, and we've noticed that it looks as if this ball is just sitting there. We don't really know that this is a table or not. But we do see that there is some lighting. Here you have a little bit of light, and here you have some dark. So why is that? Well, we have no lights in our scene. Why does it appear that there's a light source coming from behind us upper right? Well, in order for us to see the models, 3ds Max has to generate some form of light, just so we can see our models. If not, if it was completely dark, there'd be no models. However, as soon as we introduce a light in 3ds Max, that automatically goes away. So we're going to look at Create, and our third tab over here is Lights. Now by default, the word photometric comes up, and we're going to ignore that for this semester and go down to the standard lights. Notice we have 6 different lights here. We will not work with mental ray lights this semester, so we're really only going to get to know about 6. And they're pretty much all the same in terms of settings, but some project light differently. The first one I'm going to show you is the Omni. And what the Omni does is you can go out to anywhere in any view and just click, and it creates almost like a light bulb, a little shape that actually sends light in all directions. Now if you notice, as we click the move button, we can move it just like any other object. Notice how as I'm moving this thing around, the light source is strongest, and then it gets darker in the areas, the shadowing. And then we can also go up. The higher we go up, the brighter it seems to get, because the light actually is going to travel farther. And as light travels, it actually spreads out. So if you come way down in here and you just put this light right above there, you're just going to get enough light to keep that going, where we may have to actually put lights up in the ceiling, and that's one of the reasons why lights are in the ceiling and not on the floor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a quick render. And notice now what we have here is that the floor is actually affected by the light source as well as the ball. And then we can go ahead and move another spot and do another test render. And notice how the light now is adjusting. So when we look at our scene, we want to determine where is the light coming from. And I know we did that our first semester. Okay, now that's an Omni light, and all lights are going to have the same type of settings for the most part. With the light selected, we go into Modify just like we would with an object, and we have some general parameters. And at any point we can change the Omni to the other 2 types of lights we're going to learn, spot and directional. We'll turn that light off. Notice that it's pitch dark now, and we can do a render. And why is it pitch dark? Well, why didn't Max try to compensate for the lights? Well, it's assuming that you want the light turned off as if it is dark. Okay. The other thing we have is shadows, and we're going to mess with shadows in a little while. But for now, just leave that off. Look at intensity, and what you're going to notice here is the multiplier is like upping the wattage of the light bulb. Right now, it's like a 100-watt light bulb, say, If we change that to 5, that's like a 500 watt light bulb. Now the effect we have there is called washout. And washout is very common when you start working with lights. You tend to want to overkill the lights. And in this case, let's say that one was just not, wasn't dark enough. Or I'm sorry, wasn't bright enough. You say, I want more light. Well, sometimes upping the modifier isn't the best thing to do. The alternative is to hold that shift key, take your move tool, and clone that light into a different area of the room, adjusting it in an area. Now, watch when we render here, you can tell there are two light sources here. And in a little while, we're going to learn about exclusions and different settings that can allow the light to affect the scene, but it won't be as obvious that there is a light over there. Placement's also a big area. The farther back you go, the more realistic it might look. But notice as I'm moving around my scene, I still have that issue. Okay, so that's when you've got to determine what's the best approach. And then last but not least, the other thing that we can change at this point is going to be the color. By default, the light is white. Let's say we're doing an outdoor scene. I'm going to throw a little bit of yellow in there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and render. Notice now it actually has more like a sunlight effect to it, but we still see this white light over here that dominates the other one. So any color you can imagine, we want to do a nighttime scene, we might want to run some blue in there. And that starts to add a little bit of darkness in there. Okay, so that was our first lesson on Omni lights. And in our next lesson, we'll actually get into spotlights.